Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Dennis MacDonald, thank you for joining me in my home. I really appreciate it, my friend.
Well, it's a pleasure. Absolute pleasure.
We're passing this mic back and forth, and we've figured out a way to make it work. I have a question from Patreon member, JD. Thank you for being a Patreon. Join today if you haven't, before the end comes. In the Odyssey, Odysseus is discharged from beneath his blind holder by tricking them by having them touch sheepskin. In Torah, Jacob is discharged from beneath his blind holder by tricking them by having them touch sheepskin. Was this thought up and written twice independently in antiquity, or is there perhaps some mimesis here? Maybe Jacob's mother knew the story of Odysseus and the Cyclops?
JD, that's a fascinating question, and I have no answer to it. So it's something that I would have to investigate if I wanted to press forward. But let me talk about the methodology of comparing passages in the Hebrew Bible with the Greek epic. There are lots of potential overlaps between the Homeric epics and other Greek literature and the Hebrew Bible. And there are some that I think really must be assessed by Hebrew Bible scholars, and for the most part, they're ignored. And I think that's unfortunate. The rule of thumb in trying to understand what is the relationship of mythologies in Greece and mythologies in, let's say, the Near East in Semitic languages has to do with the most likely native environment for the origin of the story. And then whether that origin gets textualized in a certain way. To what extent was that text then known widely? Let me give you some examples. If one finds that you have in the Middle East a story about sea adventures, and you find it also in the Odyssey, it's most likely that the Greek is the earlier version than the Semitic one, simply because the Greeks were more oriented toward the sea. And that's true also of speculations about the stars, because the Greeks knew the constellations. They traveled widely because of them, and they could had sophisticated instruments even for measuring longitude and latitude. On the other hand, if you have stories of battle and single man-to-man warfare, that's more likely to come from the Greek world than in other cultures. So that if you fought the David and Goliath story is often thought to be similar to man-to-man conflict in the Iliad. And in that case, we know the Iliad was textualized and was widely available. And it's not impossible that someone with the Semitic background had read it and made the David and Goliath story. So that's one example. If one, however, finds that you have a story of a flood, you're more likely to come from the Middle East or Egypt, because they have mighty rivers that flooded often on a yearly basis. You have very little flooding in Greece, for example, or in Rome, because you don't have the same kinds of rivers. So this is also true of some nature phenomena of storms. The storms are much more ferocious in the Middle East with dust storms and thunderbolts and so on than you have in Greece, although you have them. So when folklorists attempt to identify the migration of similar stories from the Greek world into the Middle East, including Egypt, or the other direction, the issue of native origin comes into play, and whether the mythologies that are related to these various geographical determinants had been textualized so that it could be imitated. Otherwise, it's more likely that these stories were circulated by merchants and soldiers. Those would be the primary ways that cultures exchanged information.
Ladies and gentlemen, be sure to sign up for Dr. Dennis R. MacDonald's Greek Mimesis in the New Testament course, Reading the Gospels with One Eye on Greek Poetry. Dennis spends 18 lectures diving into several parallels, building up the methodology to show you his methods and how he sees that the New Testament authors cleverly rewrite and really make Jesus such a better figure than what we see in the older Greek myths and their poetry. You can sign up today, own it for life. There are several hours, well over 8 hours of content in this course with 18 lectures. Dennis gives you so much to read and look up and consider in investigating. Did the New Testament authors actually imitate the Greek epics to write their narratives about Jesus? There's several reading recommendations, additional resources under every single one of the lectures. You can download 1 through 18 on MP3 in case you want to just download it and have it in your whatever the device might be in order to work and listen at the same time. You don't have to just see it. But if you decide to watch the content, it is all in 4K, extremely high quality content, as you can see.
And you did it in from Greek, Latin.
The audio is nice and loud, takes you through his book. Dennis takes a deep dive. Be sure to sign up today. I hope you will. This helps Dennis MacDonald, and it helps educate the world on what's going on in scholarship.